So today's story is about a 25-year-old British journalist named Annie. Now, Annie was an incredibly logical, evidence-based thinker. Her entire career was built around shooting documentaries on paranormal investigations, and time again, she had exposed fake haunted locations and brought the rational truth to the world. Let's get into the video. This work eventually brought her to London. She had heard rumors about a famous, luxurious antique hotel called the Langham Hotel, which was supposedly heavily haunted. The legend went that many years ago, a doctor and his wife came there for their honeymoon and stayed in room 333. But while inside that room, the doctor brutally murdered his wife and then took his own life. Ever since, people claim the doctor's spirit roamed room 333. Annie didn't believe a word of it.
So, she made a plan. She was going to spend one night in that exact room and uncover the truth. When Annie walked through the main entrance of the Langham Hotel, she noticed the floor was covered in plush, soft carpeting, and the walls were lined with massive, towering paintings. Carrying a suitcase in one hand and her camera bag in the other, she approached the reception desk. The receptionist greeted her with a warm, professional smile. But the moment Annie handed over her booking confirmation for room 333, the receptionist's face went completely blank. Her hands froze. When Annie asked if everything was all right, the woman quickly forced a strange smile and muttered, "Sorry, ma'am." Annie had stayed in countless hotels for her job, and she knew that almost everywhere used digital keycards nowadays. So when the receptionist handed her an old, heavy, traditional brass key, it felt a bit off. Nonetheless, she took the elevator to the third floor. While the rest of the hotel was bustling with life, the third floor was completely different. It was dead silent. Room 333 was located at the very end of a long corridor. The paintings on these walls were faded, and the dim yellow wall lamps cast incredibly deep, unsettling shadows. The carpet looked so ancient it felt like it hadn't been cleaned in decades, and with every single step Annie took, the floorboards beneath her feet groaned softly. The door to the room was made of dark, polished wood with a heavy brass handle. When Annie reached out and grabbed it, the metal was ice cold. She unlocked it, pushed the door open, and was immediately greeted by pitch darkness. She set her suitcase down, clicked on her phone's flashlight, and began searching for the light switches. The room was decorated in a heavy Victorian style. A massive king-sized bed, antique dressing tables, and a full-length mirror mounted on the wall directly facing the bed. She finally located the switchboard near the bed, but the exact moment she flipped the lights on, a loud thud echoed from the doorway. Annie gasped, spinning around slowly. She realized that the suitcase she had left just outside the door had somehow tipped over and fallen. Brushing it off, she brought the suitcase inside, took off her coat, unzipped her gear, and began setting up her recording equipment. Tripod, camera, microphone, everything was placed systematically. It was November, and as the night rolled in, the room started getting freezing cold. Annie lit a small fire in the fireplace, ordered a sandwich, and sat down on a sofa in the corner to research more ghost sightings on her laptop. Her camera was rolling, her mic was live, and as she drifted deep into her work, she unexpectedly fell fast asleep. A few hours later, a sharp, sudden knock on the door jolted Annie awake. Disoriented, she sat up. Before she could even process it, the knocking came again, followed by a man's voice. "Your room service, madam." Annie was confused. Her sandwich had been delivered hours ago. Assuming it was a mistake and someone else's order had been brought to her room, she got up and looked through the tiny peephole. Outside stood a butler, holding a large tray with a plate completely covered by a silver dome lid. Annie opened the door and said, "I didn't order anything." But the butler, completely expressionless, replied, "This is your order, ma'am." And the moment he said that, he lifted the lid. What Annie saw next absolutely paralyzed her. Sitting right there on the plate was Annie's own severed, bloody head. Annie let out a blood-curdling shriek and slammed her eyes shut in pure terror. But when she opened them just a second later, the butler had vanished into thin air. The corridor was completely empty.
Terrified, Annie slammed the door shut, locked it, and rushed to check her camera footage. But when she looked at the screen, her memory card was completely corrupted. She checked her voice recorder next. There was no sound of a knock and no voice of a butler. The only thing recorded on the audio tape was the sound of the door opening, closing, and Annie's own horrific scream. It was now 1 a.m. The fire was still burning in the fireplace, but the temperature in the room was plummeting rapidly, turning bone-chillingly cold. Panicking, Annie hurried into the bathroom to splash cold water on her face. But as she wiped her eyes and looked up at the mirror, her heart stopped. Standing directly behind her was a grotesque, terrifying man. He was wearing tattered Victorian-era clothes, his fingernails were impossibly long, and his face looked severely decayed. It was the doctor. His hand slowly reached out, moving straight for Annie's throat as if to strangle her. Annie whipped around with a scream, but there was no one there. Annie had hit her limit. She frantically packed her things and grabbed the door handle to escape. But the door wouldn't budge. It was jammed shut, as if someone had locked her in from the outside. Suddenly, all the lights in room 333 began violently flickering. And in the midst of those flashing lights, the terrifying doctor reappeared. His skin was stark white, his eyes were a piercing yellow, and he began walking slowly right toward her. Out of options, Annie began screaming at the top of her lungs for help. Hearing her desperate, frantic screams, 2 or 3 hotel staff members rushed up to the room and managed to force the door open. But what they saw inside absolutely froze the blood in their veins. There was no one else in the room, but Annie was completely out of her mind, violently smashing her own head into the bathroom mirror over and over again, screaming hysterically. The glass was shattered, and shards were deeply embedded in her face. The staff rushed in, desperately pulling her away from the glass. Annie fought them, screaming like a lunatic, until she finally collapsed and passed out in their arms. When she finally woke up, she was in the hotel's medical room. Trembling violently, she told the staff everything. She insisted that she wasn't trying to hurt herself. She said that the horrific doctor had grabbed her by the hair and was forcefully slamming her head into the glass. Later, a staff member quietly revealed a chilling truth to her. Years ago, that twisted doctor had murdered his wife in that exact same way, by repeatedly smashing her head into the mirror until he died. Annie eventually recovered from her physical injuries, but the pure horror of what happened in Langham Hotel's room 333 would remain scarred in her mind forever. And if you like this video, please subscribe my channel and comment also, are you from London